I never thought something like this could happen to me. I'm not a man who scares easy. I want to say that right at the start because I know how this story sounds, and I know what people think when they hear it. They think the person telling it was jumpy, nervous, the kind of person who sees things that aren't there. I am not that person. I have never been that person. I am a county code inspector. Was, I should say. I took early retirement last year. 18 years on the job before that. 18 years of walking into houses that most people wouldn't set foot in. Condemned buildings. Hoarder houses packed floor to ceiling with junk and rot. Houses with black mold climbing every wall. Houses where the floors had gone soft and the ceilings had come down, and the whole structure was one bad day away from folding in on itself. I have walked through all of it, with my clipboard and my camera and my checklist. I have never once left a job before it was done. I left Deller Road before it was done. That's how you know this is different. The assignment came through on a Thursday morning in September. Standard paperwork. Property assessment prior to scheduled demolition. Address, 4 Deller Road. Former residence of the Alt family. I knew the name. Everyone in the county knew the name. The Alts had been gone since October of 2013. Richard and Carol Alt, their 2 daughters, Emma who was 9 and Lily who was 6. All 4 of them. Gone. No note, no warning, no sign of struggle. They were just there on a Sunday, and then they were not there on a Monday, and no one who looked ever found out what happened to them or where they went. The case went cold in 2015. No bodies, no confirmed sightings, no real leads at all. Just a family-shaped hole in the town and a house sitting empty on a county road. The town had been trying to knock the house down for 2 years. Legal delays, property disputes, the usual back and forth that happens when a thing belongs to nobody and everybody wants to decide what to do with it. Finally, it was cleared. Demolition was scheduled. I was sent in first to do the structural assessment. Standard procedure. You don't send a crew in until you know what they're walking into. I drove out on a Friday morning. Clear day. Cool, but not cold. I had my clipboard, my camera, my flashlight, my file. I expected to be done in an hour, maybe less. An empty house is an empty house. You note the damage, you photograph the issues, you file the report, you go home for lunch. That was my expectation. I parked on the road in front of the property. Sat in my car for a moment, just looking at the place. It looked the way you'd expect an abandoned house to look after 11 years. The yard had gone completely over, grass and weeds chest high in places. A tree near the porch had dropped a big limb sometime in the past few years, and it was just lying there in the yard, slowly going back to earth. The porch itself was sagging on the right side, where a support post had rotted at the base. Paint peeling off everything. Windows dark and cloudy with grime. From the outside, it looked like what it was, a house that had been empty for a long time. I noted my arrival time, 8:47 a.m. I got out, walked up through the overgrown path to the front porch. The boards shifted under my feet, but held. I went to the front door, tried the handle. It turned. Not forced, not broken. The door was just unlocked. The handle turned clean, and the door swung inward without any resistance at all. Like someone had left it unlocked on purpose. Like someone was expecting company. I stood in the doorway for a second. Not because I was scared. I want to be clear about that. I was just noting it. An unlocked front door on an abandoned property usually means one of 2 things. Either the last person through left it open, or there have been people in and out recently. Both of those things matter to the assessment. I made a note of it on my clipboard, and I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. I've walked into hundreds of abandoned buildings, and I know what they smell like. Mildew, rot, damp wood and old dust, and the particular closed-up smell of air that hasn't moved in years. That is what an empty building smells like, always, without exception. This was something else. It was faint, very faint, but it was there underneath everything. Something warm, something that reminded me of my mother's kitchen on a Sunday. Something cooked, something recent. I stopped in the entryway and I breathed in carefully, tried to place it. Couldn't get it exactly, but it was there. Something had been cooked in this house not very long ago. I wrote that down too. Then I moved into the living room. The living room looked right. Dust on everything. The couch had that flat, compressed look furniture gets when it hasn't been touched in years. A layer of grime on the windowsills, cobwebs in the corners, and across the face of the dark television set. A small framed photo on the wall, too dirty to see clearly. Everything had the still, gray quality of a room that time had finished with. But near the fireplace, lying on its side on the hearth, was a small shoe. A child's shoe. Pink. Faded but not rotted. It had been there a long time. I photographed it. Made a note. Kept moving. The kitchen stopped me cold. I have thought about that kitchen table many times since. About what it meant to see it. About the gap between what a room should look like and what that room looked like. An abandoned house, 11 years empty, should have a kitchen that looks like the rest of it. Dust and stillness and decay. That is what should have been in that kitchen. The table was set. 4 places. 4 plates, ceramic, arranged neatly. 4 cups, silverware laid out properly. And in the center of the table, on a wooden cutting board, a loaf of bread. Not packaged bread, not something out of a bag. Homemade bread. The kind with the rough top and the thick crust and the smell. I walked to the table. I stood over the bread and I looked at it for a moment. Then I reached out and pressed my finger against the side of the loaf. It gave. Soft. Still soft all the way through. I pulled my hand back, looked around the kitchen. No sounds from anywhere in the house. The room was completely still. I turned slowly, looking at everything. The counters were dusty. The window over the sink was grime-covered and dark. But that table, that bread, that table could have been set that morning. I took photographs, lots of them. I was very thorough. I photographed every cup, every plate, the position of every piece of silverware. I photographed the bread from 4 angles. I documented it all. Then I told myself what I needed to tell myself to keep working. Squatters. Someone had been in the house recently. Someone had been living here or passing through. It happened. Abandoned properties attracted people. It was not unheard of. It was not impossible. I held on to that and I kept moving. Upstairs. The parents' bedroom. Bed made. The bedspread was old and faded, but it was made up properly, pulled tight the way someone who cares about it makes a bed. There was a dent in the left pillow. A head-shaped dent, fresh enough that the foam hadn't bounced back. Like someone had been sleeping there and gotten up not long before I arrived. I photographed the pillow, wrote down the time, kept moving. The daughter's room. 2 small beds, both made. Both with the same neat, careful look as the parents' room. On the pillow of the bed closest to the window, a stuffed rabbit. Old and worn in the way children's stuffed animals get worn. Loved thin. I photographed it. I opened the closet. Children's clothes, hung on small plastic hangers, neatly arranged. I reached out and touched the sleeve of a small sweater. No dust on my fingers. These clothes had been recently cleaned. In an abandoned house with no running utilities, in a room that hadn't been lived in for 11 years, the clothes in the closet were clean and smelled faintly of laundry. I closed the closet. I stood in the middle of that small bedroom for a moment. The rabbit on the pillow looked at the ceiling. The room was very still. I went back downstairs. The calendar was on the kitchen wall beside the refrigerator. I'd walked past it on my way through and not looked at it closely. Now I stopped and looked at it. It was a standard wall calendar, the paper kind, the kind you buy at a drugstore. It was open to October 2013, the month the alts disappeared. Someone had been marking off the days in red pen, every day crossed off with a small, neat X. Every single day. I looked closer. The marks didn't stop at October 2013. The calendar had been flipped forward, page by page, month by month, all the way through. I carefully turned the pages. Each month's days were crossed off. January, February, March, through 2014, through 2015, all the way forward through the years, all the way to this year, all the way to September, the current month. Days marked off, every single one. 11 years of days. Someone had stood in this kitchen every day or close to it and crossed off the day on a calendar. For 11 years. I stepped back from the calendar. My throat was dry. I looked around the kitchen again. The bread on the table, the set plates, the faint smell of something cooked. I went outside, stood on the sagging porch in the clear morning air and called my office. Voicemail. I left a message. Said I was at the Deller Road property and there were some things that needed to be flagged before the assessment could be completed. I called the sheriff's non-emergency line, got put on hold. I stood on that porch for 4 minutes listening to hold music. Then I hung up. I told myself I would finish the assessment. I am a professional. I have been doing this job for 18 years. I finish what I start. I went back inside. I should not have gone back inside. The basement door was off the kitchen. I had seen it earlier and left it for last, the way I always do. Basements take more time. More to photograph, more to note, more to check. The door opened onto a wooden staircase. I tested each step before I put my weight on it. They held. I went down slowly, flashlight out, and stood at the bottom and looked around. The basement was mostly what I expected. Concrete walls, low ceiling, old water heater in the corner, long dead. Some shelving units along one wall, empty. The floor was bare concrete, dusty, and in the far corner near the wall there was a darker patch where water had come in at some point. And then I swept my flashlight to the left side of the basement and I stopped moving entirely. A mattress. On the floor. Low to the ground, just a bare mattress with blankets on it, and the blankets were pushed back the way blankets get pushed back when someone gets out of bed in the morning. A small camp lantern sitting on the floor beside it, the kind with the battery light. On the milk crate next to the mattress, 3 or 4 cans of food. I stepped closer. Brand names I recognized, purchased recently. These were not 11-year-old cans. These were bought sometime in the last few weeks. I turned to the wall. The writing covered most of it, floor to ceiling in some sections. Done in black marker in small, neat, careful handwriting. Not scrawled, not frantic. Careful, controlled. Each line the same. A date. And after it, 2 words. They came. Over and over. Date after date after date. I moved the flashlight slowly across the wall. The dates went back years, all the way back to late 2013. Some months had 2 or 3 dates. Some had more. Some stretches had gaps of several weeks, but they kept going. Year after year. Date after date. Each one followed by the same 2 words. They came. Over 100 dates on that wall. Maybe more. I didn't count them all. The most recent date was from 2 days before my visit. They came. I stood in that basement and I understood something. Someone had been living in this house. Not visiting. Living. For 11 years, someone had been sleeping on that mattress, eating those canned goods, coming and going, updating that calendar upstairs, setting that table. For 11 years, while the town tried to figure out what to do with this property, and the alt case sat cold in a filing cabinet, someone had been here. And 2 days ago, someone or something had come that made them write it on the wall again. I heard the creak. From upstairs, from the kitchen directly above me. 1 step. The sound a floorboard makes when someone shifts their weight onto it. 1 step, and then nothing. I did not move for a long moment. The flashlight held steady because I was holding it tightly with both hands, and I was not going to let it shake. I listened. The house was silent above me. Just the 1 creak, and then nothing at all. I went back upstairs. The kitchen was empty, exactly as I'd left it. The bread on the table, the 4 plates, the 4 cups. Except I had photographed that table carefully. I knew exactly where everything was. The cup at the nearest place setting on the right side had been moved. I was certain of it. It was closer to the edge of the table than it had been. Not far. An inch, maybe 2. But I knew where it had been. I had photographed it. I knew. Someone had touched that cup while I was in the basement. I walked to the front door. I was done. The assessment was not complete, but I was done. I would file what I had and let the sheriff handle the rest. I reached the front door and grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't move. I pulled again. Nothing. I looked at the door. There was a bolt above the handle. Slid shut. A simple bolt lock on the inside of the front door. I had not noticed it when I came in. It had not been engaged when I entered. It was engaged now. Someone had thrown the bolt while I was in the kitchen. I fumbled it open. It took me longer than it should have. My hands were steady, but my fingers weren't listening to me the way they usually do. I got it open. I pushed the door and stepped out onto the porch into the cool, clear air, and I breathed. I stood on the porch for a moment. Then I turned and looked back at the house. The daughter's room. 2nd floor, window on the left. I looked up at it because that was the window that faced the porch. That was the window that faced me. A face. Small. Still. Just there in the window for a second, behind the dirty glass. There and then not there. Gone before I had fully registered it. But I saw it. I know what I saw. A face in that window. Small enough to be a child's face, or a very small person's face, just looking down at me. Still and calm. No expression I could read through the grime and the distance. Then nothing. Just the dark window and the gray glass. I walked to my car. I got in. I drove directly to the sheriff's office without stopping and without calling ahead. 2 deputies went out within the hour. I waited at the office. They were out there for nearly 2 hours. When they came back, they told me what they found. The basement setup. The mattress and blankets. The camp lantern. The canned food. All there. The calendar on the kitchen wall, marked up through the current week. The bread on the table, which the deputies confirmed was fresh. The clean clothes in the daughter's closet. No one in the house. They checked every room, every closet, the attic, the crawl space under the porch. No one. One of the deputies found something else. In the back of the daughter's closet, pushed behind the hanging clothes where you wouldn't see it unless you moved them aside and crouched down. A small spiral notebook, the kind a child might use for school. It had been used almost completely. The pages were filled in neat, small handwriting. The same entry, repeated. Not every page, but every few pages throughout the whole notebook. The same words over and over. "We are still here. Please don't tear it down. This is the only place they can find us." The sheriff's department compared the handwriting. It matched samples from the older daughter, Emma, who had been 9 years old when the family disappeared, who would be 20 years old now. The handwriting had the same characteristic patterns as samples from Emma's school records, which were still on file. The Alt case was briefly reopened. The county brought in some additional resources. They tested the notebook. They tested the blankets and the food containers from the basement. They found nothing that gave them a clean DNA match to anyone in any database. They followed up on a few things, and the leads went nowhere, the way leads in that case had always gone nowhere, and after a while, the file got quiet again. The house was demolished 3 weeks later, per the original schedule. The notebook went into evidence. It's in a box in the county records office. I don't know what box. I don't know what shelf. I assume it will sit there for a very long time. I took early retirement 4 months after that inspection. People at the office understood. I had enough years in. It made sense on paper. Nobody asked too many hard questions. I don't know what was in that house. I want to be honest about that. I have thought about it nearly every day since, and I still don't know. I don't know if it was the Alt family. I don't know if it was someone pretending to be them, or using their space, or something else I don't have words for. I don't know who kept that calendar. I don't know who made that bed and set that table and pressed their head into that pillow and got up in the morning and crossed off another day. I don't know who wrote on that basement wall. They came, over and over, 100 times and more, over 11 years. Who came? What came? What were they waiting in that house to find them? What were they hiding from? I don't know. I know the bread was soft. I pressed it with my finger and it gave. That's not something you can imagine. That's not something you misread. The bread was soft and fresh in an abandoned house, and someone had set 4 places at a table in a house where a family of 4 had disappeared 11 years before. I know the cup moved. I know where it was, and I know where it was when I came back upstairs, and I know the difference. I know what I saw in that window. I know it was small and still and looking down at me. I know it was there, and then it wasn't. And I know the room was empty when the deputy searched it. Those things I know. I drove past Deller Road once, about a week after the demolition, just to see. The house was gone. Nothing there but a cleared lot and some debris they hadn't hauled away yet. A section of porch railing, some broken boards, the overgrown yard with the flattened grass where the structure had stood. I slowed down, but I didn't stop. I kept driving. The foreman on the demolition crew, I ran into him at a gas station maybe 6 weeks later. We knew each other a little. He'd heard I was involved with the assessment. He asked me about it, and I gave him a short answer. And then I asked him how the job had gone. He said it came down easy. No problems. Clean work. Then he paused. The way people pause when there's something else. I waited. He said when they broke open the kitchen wall to get at the plumbing before the main knockdown, they found something inside the wall cavity, tucked in there. He said he almost didn't mention it to anyone, but it stayed on his mind. A set of keys, on a key ring, inside the wall. He said there was a small plastic charm on the ring, a sunflower, yellow, faded, but still there. I didn't say anything for a moment. I knew about the sunflower. It was in the missing persons file. Emma Alt, age 9, had a sunflower keychain she carried everywhere. It was listed among her known personal effects. Her teacher mentioned it. Her grandmother mentioned it. It was in the report. I read that file myself 3 days after the inspection, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning because I couldn't sleep. The keys were inside the wall. Not dropped, not lost behind something. Inside the wall. Like they had been put there. Like someone had placed them in the wall cavity and then sealed it up. Like someone had put something precious in the safest place they could think of and walled it in to keep it there. The foreman said he turned them over to the sheriff's department. I assume they're in a box somewhere with the notebook. I don't know what it means. I don't know what any of it means. I just know that somewhere in that house, for 11 years, someone kept the table set. And somebody was still waiting to come home.